Okay, right, so it's 9:01, so we'll start this session. So I'd like to introduce you to Brian Warren, Director of the Backstage Centre. Brian's going to do the rest, apparently. Brian, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, because I know it's really busy, to do this today. So I'm now going to hand over to you.
Okay, hello everyone. Nice to meet everyone in this digital world that is. This is a fairly short sort of intro, really. So I'll just explain a little bit about who I am and what we're up to at the Backstage Centre. For those of you that don't know the Backstage Centre, it's based in Purfleet on Thames, as it is now renamed. The Backstage Centre is a rehearsal production space, so we work across the creative industries. And look after our clients from all areas, so that's TV, film, games, music industry, theatre, live events, touring and corporate. We, like everyone, have seen obviously quite an impact from the last couple of years with a public health impact. For us, though, we were quite fortunate because we were allowed to carry on and make television programmes, so we did. And one of the things we focused on during the time that we were able to work was also the impact for our industry and what we need to do to address this. And one of the kind of resounding features was that our supply chain of personnel, the human resource chain, had been seriously impacted. So we decided to start doing something about that. We got involved with a couple of campaigns. And when this opportunity came up to sort of speak to others and to sort of share these stories, I suppose, about where we all are with this, to try and understand and get underneath that and what we need to do to address it, and in particular, getting the message across to our young people. So I was very keen to see how we can engage in education campaigns, how we can look at the way that sort of careers development exists at the moment, how it is put across in all our institutions, and what we as an industry can do more to support that, and also to highlight the range, the variety of things that are actually happening right on our doorstep. So some people might be surprised to know that the Backstage Centre in Purfleet, whilst we like to keep some things secret, we do occasionally like to shout out about stuff. And for the last 2 years, so 24 months worth of filming, have predominantly been making content for Sky Television. And what has emerged from that is that the way that we'll engage with our materials, how we enjoy our entertainment industry, has opened up some new opportunities career-wise. So where we would have traditionally looked at the sort of the craft side of how we make things, certainly in terms of design, we were really also concerned and interested to find out what the other avenues were for opportunities for people to train work. So, for example, one of the biggest things, and we've probably all done this ourselves, and if you live, as I do, in the Southend area, you've probably recently been upgraded on your broadband at home, providing a very high-speed network into your house. And one of the reasons for this is the drive of the technology that's making that happen. What we don't have are enough of the engineers that are coming through, the installation engineers, the people that can help design systems, what we call a systems integrator. And this is simply because nobody's really thought about it before. There are very traditional routes for people that go off into other pathways. So, for example, we may have people who end up working for telecoms companies. And these are exactly the people that we're looking for to come into the entertainment industry. So we know that there's an opportunity there. And the other is to look at the more traditional skills that we would associate possibly with the building trade. So we use carpenters, we use metal fabricators. We employ scenic artists, so people don't often realise that some of these skill sets are transferable. So we're really keen to see how that can work too, and how we can bring people into our sector from where there might have been a different route for them. And why are we doing this? Well, the reason we're doing this is also because of the growth and the expansion of the Creative Estuary. So the Creative Estuary is this initiative which started a few years ago now, with the Mayor of London's team, and this is spread out, so it literally cups the coasts of the Thames all the way down to Southend on one side and down to Margate on the other. And it has identified that within just that region alone, there are 46,000 people working in the creative industries. And these people contribute to 16,000 small to medium scale enterprises. of which most of us are in the entertainment industry. So we're very keen to see what else we can do. We know there are apprenticeship programs and they're very successful, but they're very small, and they tend to be very small numbers for the entertainment industry. And one of the impacts for that is obviously the size of the companies that are providing them. They don't really have the manpower to really take on more than a small number. And also their timescales are very tight. When you're working on a production timescale, you've got to stick to the plan. And to give you an example of the impact of that through COVID, so one of the shoots we've just done, which should have been a 6-month contract, ended up being 9 months. Those extra 3 months is somewhere in the region of £300,000 of extra cost to the production company. So it kind of gives you a sense of scale there. So we're really aware of all these impacts. We're really aware of how fragile some of the organisations are. And so when we're looking at training, when we're looking at things like work placements, work experience opportunities, we have to really consider how that impacts on the production side as well. But it doesn't mean we don't want to do it, it just means we have to think about it. So the message I wanted to get out was really to connect with our education world, not just in Essex, this is really right across the whole of the sectors around us. And bear in mind our catchment area is a 30-mile radius from Purfleet. So we go up into West Essex, into North Essex, into Hertfordshire, down into Kent, and we tend to attract people from that locale. So seeing all these people come through and come into working with us, which is great, we've also realised that quite a lot of people who are Essex based aren't actually working with us at the Backstage Centre. And this is something else we wanted to do something about. So that's my call out really, is to sort of put that out there for everyone to have a little think about and contribute their thoughts to this and what we can do to obviously help improve it. And in terms of the qualification side of this and what people need to think about in terms of training, that supply chain is really important too, that we get people onto the right training programs so that they're ready to come into our industries. So I hope that's given you a kind of a quick overview of where I am. I appreciate everyone's really busy today. So I'm really sort of happy to take some sort of further questions on that. And also to see how, obviously find out how we can get much more involved with what you're all doing in your own organisations. So that is me.
Thank you, Brian. No, that's really interesting on how the sector has changed in the pandemic. And I know that up at Purfleet-on-Thames, I have to call it its correct name, you do have some really interesting companies up there using that area, but obviously you can't say for confidentiality, but you do have some big names up there as well. So if students were to go into this industry, they'd be working with some really big names as well, which is always exciting, isn't it? And it's a puller, isn't it, for young people as well. So has anybody got any questions for Brian at all? Oh, you've stunned them into silence.
Stunned them into silence.
Brian, I've got a question. Well, I've got a couple of questions for you, actually, as you'd probably not be surprised about. One of them, and this might be too big a question if I'm truthful, but one of them is, and you've mentioned there that there is such an array of skills and different types of roles, from carpenter to actor to whatever else it is within there. As careers professionals, as most of the people on this call will be, how is best to introduce the creative industry to, particularly to young people, but to anyone really, when there is just such a vast, it's probably of all the sectors, I think it's the one that's the most diverse. So how would you suggest we go about just starting that conversation with them?
My answer to that question is always, whenever you watch anything like a film or a television program, is to actually read the credits.
Okay.
Because when you read the credits at the end, you'll see how many people are involved with creating that product. So if we take something, I mean, I don't know how many people here are sort of massive Disney fans. I know Yvonne is. But when you go and see a cartoon, for example, on the scale that you might see, something, I don't know, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen a Disney show myself, but when I've sat down and looked at the credits, I know there'll be in a region of 200 to 300 people involved with post-production. And those skills are very specific. They're very, very to the point. And the post-production side of our industry is a massive employer. Most people doing that, and those that we know who live and work in Essex, are lone workers. They're people quite often working from their own studios or home. And where we're interested in, I suppose, joining the dots is really looking at that. So what are the jobs we've got now? What are the jobs that are coming around the corner? And what are we already doing with our young people? Or what are they already doing? And not realise, in fact, they've already got some of these skills already. Any child that, and I think we can probably safely assume that every child plays a game of some kind, and probably uses a mobile platform or a computer by which to do that, are already starting to engage with the process. They're already starting to think about design. How many young people then turn that into some sort of artistic direction and journey? How many of your young people download an app to their phone so they can draw or paint? These are all skills that are absolutely vital for the film and TV industry. But there's also those that are more interested in the other side of it, the behind the scenes, the coding. How do we make something actually work? So the software that might be used in a film studio is something that's taken its root really from the need, the market. We've had to generate the next best thing. As you're probably aware, and you've probably seen this, as we change the way we do things, we start to use the term immersive quite a bit. So we like to create what's called an immersive entertainment environment. You might have seen in London, there were some exhibitions that were turned into a virtual experience. So you could walk into a Van Gogh exhibition, for example. That uses technology, which isn't particularly new. It's just the way we're using it. So it's getting that message across to young people is look at what you're using. What is it that's going on there? How many people are involved in the thing that you enjoy doing or watching or listening to? And quite often that gives us that catapult, that start point. The other side of that is also look at in your local scene what's around you. So if you have theatres, galleries, if you have access points you can go into and encourage your young people to do this and to engage so that they can see exactly what's happening on their doorstep in terms of the creative arts. And probably the start point, which is right at the beginning for all of us in our lives, is to remember this thing. Shakespeare was the master of the iambic pentameter. The iambic pentameter is the rhythm of your heart, and everyone who is born from a womb will have experienced that rhythm, and we never lose it. And when we design things in entertainment industry, particularly in music, we still hold on to that little trick. So we know it goes right back to the moment we all start our lives, and it continues its journey. So the creative world for us is a complete thing. It's something that is about, I suppose, all those other elements of our life that are really important, not just going to work 9 to 5. That's the longest answer you've probably ever had to that question, Ryan.
No, you know what? I thought that it was a relatively impossible question, actually, but you've answered it really well. So thank you.
Can I just say as well, excuse me, it wasn't until I started working with Brian on putting Thurrock's Next Top Boss Awards evening together that I actually realised how many different jobs there were just putting that one event together, and I really got I think submerged, didn't I, Brian, into the whole process and really learn what jobs there were. So, you know, excuse me, everything from lighting to sound. That was the biggest one, was sound. You can't just drop something. I was like, well, why can't you just drop something in there? No, we can't do that. So for me, it was absolutely fantastic. For 4 years, I think we did, didn't we, Brian? Just learning what young people need to know, and the jobs, the range of jobs in there as well. So that was an absolutely fantastic learning curve for me, and thoroughly enjoyed it, and still do. So yeah, thank you. Brian, somebody's asking, can you put your contact details, please, in
I will
the chat?
do that. I'll do that right now.
And also, we've got a question. Brian, where do people apply for jobs with you, and will you accept speculative job applications?
That's a really good question. The best thing to do with that, and I absolutely encourage people to contact me, particularly young people who are, this is quite a hard thing, isn't it? When people are starting out, is building that confidence to make contact, and also what platforms to use. So most of the jobs that we would advertise will go through, we tend to rely actually more on social media platforms and sort of, you know, kind of business sites. LinkedIn is a big one for us. The range of online platforms now is so diverse. We have to think about where we put them. So most of our jobs will go onto LinkedIn. They'll go through our network of social media, and we always advertise in the Stage newspaper, and occasionally in other platforms. But that tends to be where we're targeting, depending on the job, because it does depend on what job it is. That's where it'll be advertised. So for us, that's our go-to platforms. I'm typing and looking down. Bear with me. Have I spelt that right? I have. Good. So I'm just putting my contact in the chat. Please do email me. I'd love to speak to people. And the other thing with sort of kind of jobs, the speculative side of jobs, is that what's really important now to get across to young people is that the CV has been replaced. And in the entertainment industry, we're actually using more digital versions of that. So the digital version for us, if it's an actor, we always work from show reels. If we're recruiting someone who's a designer, we tend to have their portfolio, which is usually their website. And we will look people up. So when someone applies to work with us, once we get to the point that we actually know who they are, because we do a blind recruitment process until the point of just before interview. And then we like to get a bit of background on what we've actually done. So that's always useful. If somebody's interested in working in the theatre industry, just a kind of word of caution there, something like you'll get a 5% return in terms of somebody coming back to you on average. So that's doing it sort of more traditionally. So if you can find contact a different way, that's great. But to be honest with you, most theatre organisations will always go through an advertising campaign and recruit that way. So direct contact with those organisations doesn't tend to work on the bigger scale. However, if you want to work in your local theatres, literally go and knock on stage door. I would never discourage that. It's a really good thing to do. The theatre's going to hate me now, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be popular. I don't think you're going to be popular somehow.
If it's music industry is very different because it starts from a different place usually. Most people start off, as we call them, sort of the bedroom or garage bands, where it's usually friends coming together to create something. So there's been a huge shift there. The hard bit is for the people that are looking, the scouts that are looking for the next act, they need to see people perform. So people need to gig. There's some great stuff happening in Southend with the SoSlam opportunities there. Absolutely fantastic. That really puts young people on a stage. Very well supported as well. The industry keep an eye on it, so they're always on the lookout. So again, it's about that engagement, putting people on stage. If we're looking for performers, that's the only way we're going to know they're any good. Or they've got the potential. So put yourself on that stage. Really encourage them.
So are you saying that to use, social media, get yourself actually out there busking, one of the better words, absolutely get yourself out there. And the other thing that we're hearing a lot from employers now is that a lot of interviews have been done online in like this forum as well. Are you finding that as well?
We had to, obviously during the pandemic, we had to, everything was online, which was very odd at first, but I think we all kind of got used to it. And what we do now is we do a sort of a hybrid version of that where we need to. Ideally, face to face always for us. Plus, we need to show them the building, what they'll actually be doing and what they'll be working with. Which, whilst we've got a 3D tour on our website, and you can all see that if you want to see it, nothing beats the real thing. So that for us is very important. The bit that I really like about the recruitment process for us is doing it as a blind process. So we do not know someone's age, gender. All we have is just the basic information in front of us when they've made the application. And this is a really important thing to get across to everybody when they're applying for a job. Fill in every box. Don't leave anything out. Even if you've got nothing to say, you must put something in there. It's really important that, because that can really affect the way we select. If we've got a large number of applicants, quite often we'll look at, well, if I'll give an example. We were advertising for an administrator recently, and I would say 15 to 20% of those applications failed to complete the actual application in the first hurdle. They left things out.
I know my mantra is, if there's a box, fill it. Even if you put not applicable, just fill it. There's a box there for a reason. So yeah, that's one thing for us to take back when we're in schools and that, talking to young people. If there's a box, fill it, basically.
Yeah, it's very important, and it doesn't matter how old you are. I think that's it applies to everyone. And for young people, when they're starting out, the one thing they're going to worry about quite often are their qualifications. Have they got enough? Is it the right one?
Yeah.
Well, yes, that's really important, and it's something that obviously we focus on. And the obvious ones that we always look out for with the sort of the fundamental skills, that's really interesting. But we're also really interested in their other things in their life. Do they play an instrument? Yeah. Are they creative? Yeah. Do they go out? Do they enjoy things? So a little bit about those details is also really important. And the reason why that's important to us is that most of the people we employ are customer facing. So we want to know how they're going to be able to deal with people. They might need to learn those skills. So we do have people who are apprentices working with us, and they've had to learn those customer facing skills. It's not something they come pre-armed with necessarily. But sometimes when we find out bits about someone's life and what else they're into, that helps us. That gives us information about, you know, what they might be like with a customer.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Brian. If anybody wanted to come up and see the backstage, because it's a fantastic building. I mean, I've been there many a time. Can people book to come and see it? Are you doing tours?
We're actually going to be doing some themed workshops. So these are that sounds really grand, doesn't it? A themed workshop.
I like it.
Yeah. What this is getting sort of like minds together into a space. So it's to do two things. One is to do some networking, which is really important, and also so that we can show the building. We have to drop these in between gaps, in the gaps between clients. And the reason for that is sometimes the clients, obviously, we're subject to confidential contracts with them, so we can't walk you around if there's a set in there, or you might see the actors or whatever. But obviously in the gaps we can fit that in, and it would be really great to get people to come and, you know, see the building, sit down, and maybe we could extend this conversation as well. We are looking at a schools engagement programme where we can do a few more visits through the year. It is quite tricky because of the time, as I say, and the numbers, but we really want to get those going a bit more. And when we get what I would call a user-friendly client, is to open that up so that you can actually meet them.
Brilliant. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll let us know. So you'll email me or Hyla, and then we can get that out to schools. Then that would be great, because I think it's worth everybody going up there, because I think it is a fantastic building, and also for the students to see it as well, for them to see that something like that is actually on their doorstep for Thurrock. But it's also easy to get to for students going into FE, because the railway station's just, I know it's a bit of a walk, because what is it, 10-minute walk from the railway station there, so it is doable basically, because we are on that C2C line. So yeah. Yes,
and all the exciting developments as well, which are incredible. So the Creative Estuary has the production corridor. So we're seeing the building of something in the region of 30 film and TV studios across the region, which is very exciting, and we're all part of that network, and we want to see that really provide these sort of, you know, on your doorstep work opportunities for our young people. And this has been one of our campaigns, which is to see how we can change what we do in the entertainment industry, whereby it's not a requirement to go travelling all around the country or all around the world all the time. That actually there's quite a bit of work on your doorstep if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And to really encourage that. But we need the young people, and we need to get them trained now.
Yeah, no, and there is I mean, a lot of work has been done over the years, as we know, but there is still a lot more work to do, because I think, right, you know, I think a lot of young people, if you say to them what is the creative industry, they'll always say the person on the stage, which to me is the end product. It's all those people that have got that person on the stage. So, you know, it's all those little intricate jobs that are needed to get that person there. So we've done a lot of work, but we've still got a lot of work to do, which is great. So, yeah.
And I think people would be surprised. Just to add to that, just one last thing on that, Yvonne, which is really important. There used to be a theatre company called 784, which stood for 7% of the population own 84% of the wealth, is what that actually means. And in an interesting way, that's how we look at what the people we put on stage. 7% of the company, and they own 84% of the wealth, because quite often they're very well paid.
Yes, exactly. That's a very good analogy. Yeah, I like that one. Okay, then. Has anybody got any more questions? If not, we'll let Brian go to his busy day. Any more questions? Oh, Ella's got a hand up.
Sorry, just one more I suppose inquiry, really, more than a question. So you said earlier that apprenticeships are pretty hard to come by within the creative industry, and most of the time that's because it's short contracts, isn't it, that they'll have to just deliver one thing or one sort of series or something. With the new, so there used to be, well, there still is a ATA model, but it's now called a shared apprenticeship model, which is essentially, I'm sure the shared apprenticeship providers would not want me calling this, but it's basically a temp agency for apprenticeships, essentially, is what it is. Do you think that that's something that that will encourage the creative industry to potentially be able to offer what will only be short-term placements, but I think they have to be at least 3 months, the placements for the different things, and if so, how do we tell the creative industry about it to be able to sort of get on board with it, really?
So that model that has been approached before, some time back, and what was identified was the one thing you need for it is a creative hub, in a sense that the people relatively geographically near each other for that to work. Right. So the key to the success is the identification of the hub areas. Now each area has a hub, one way or another, and it's just bringing those employers together first to have that conversation. It's all doable, but it's not a quick fix, just because of the mechanics involved for the organisations. So obviously anything that's done to help the companies, particularly with the sort of the paperwork side of the apprenticeships, that really helps them, and it helps them with their time and their time availability. So it's that kind of conversation first off. Well, what is it that the apprenticeship is, number one? So for example, some of the new ones that have been, well, they're kind of revamps of others, but there's a live event technician apprenticeship that's now been amalgamated with a cultural venue technician apprenticeship to create the one. So it's a new trailblazer, and this is much more kind of adaptable to different environments. So they've really thought about what didn't work with the previous version, what would work now, so that you could apply it to a theatre, you could apply it to, an event venue where they just do gigs. There's a place for that person in different environments, and that way, then you're more likely to get a group of employers come around and go, yeah, actually we could do that, and we could give that person 3 months.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll have a look to see who the new. So in this industry, who are offering the shared apprenticeships and how local they are, because if the provider is miles away, then that's not going to work either, is it? So I'll have a little look, and I'm thinking with the creative estuary, that's a natural hub, really, isn't it? So I'm thinking with that we could maybe try and, even if it's just an information webinar with whoever the local provider is of it, just to sort of try and open the conversation and the dialogue with it, really. So I'll have a little look and see.
Yeah, definitely. Good idea.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, I can't see anything else in the chat, so that's absolutely fantastic. So you've all now got Brian's email address, which is fantastic. So if you walk away from this session and think, oh, I've got a question for Brian, then please email him. He's always happy to hear from you. But once again, Brian, thank you so much for taking time out this morning. It's a really interesting sector, a growing sector as well. So thank you very much, Brian. We really do appreciate it. And thanks, everybody. And have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.